everyone, and welcome back to Austin's Friday Feast. As always, I am Austin, and this week we're going to make a super easy baked mac and cheese. Everything's pretty self-explanatory. Actually, everything we're going to use is right here in front of me. Very easy, very simple recipe that anybody, I think, can make. So just a couple of our prep steps, or actually the entire recipe. Do everything ahead of time. So when you're working with dairy ingredients, something that's very important in this recipe is that you want everything at room temperature. So make sure to prepare everything before you start cooking about half an hour in advance. Working with cold dairy or cold and warm dairy can definitely cause clumps in your cheese sauce, and you definitely don't want that. So make sure everything is at room temperature, even your butter, just gonna melt a little bit faster for you. So to go through everything, all of our prep steps, I do have a pot of boiling salted water back here. That's got about 5 quarts of water in there. Very important, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I've also measured out all of our ingredients. So altogether we have about 56 ounces of cheese here. We have 38 ounces of shredded cheddar. We have 16 ounces of Colby Jack and 8 ounces of Asiago cheese. Those are just kind of cheeses that are my favorite. Definitely play around with your cheeses. If you have a cheese that you really enjoy, instead of using that Asiago, maybe use that cheese instead. But something that's very important when you're using your cheeses is always make sure in a recipe like this to shred them at home. Same cost, actually might be a little cheaper, but when you buy those bags of already shredded cheese, it has a very floury coating on it, and that's specifically so that it melts into strips and it gives you that look. It's not good for making sauces. It actually creates clumps. It can thicken your sauce more than you want, and you just don't want that. So again, just cheeses is my preference. Definitely play around with your palate and enjoy the cheeses that you like. In regards to the portions of the cheeses that I have here, this is all cheddar. This is what's going to go on top. This was about, I'd say, 1/4 of the cheddar cheese that I shredded. And then all of the rest of the cheeses are mixed in this bowl together. That's so that when we make the sauce, it's not a bunch of cheddar over here, some Asiago here, and a little bit of Colby Jack over here. You definitely want all those cheeses to meld together very well. And in this bowl, I'm gonna end up separating it into thirds, so 2/3 and 1/3. The 1/3 we're going to use in between layers of the mac and cheese to create that super ooey gooey texture that we all absolutely love. And then the other 2/3 is actually just gonna go into the sauce in slow handfuls so that we don't thicken the sauce too quickly, and also to make sure it all melts just as we want it to. I have a 1/2 cup or an entire stick of butter. I have our elbow macaroni and cheese. It's an entire pound. And when you're cooking your mac and cheese, make sure to look at the directions. Again, we'll talk about that in just a second. I have 2.5 cups of half and half. I have a cup and a half of whole milk. I have a 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour that's going to help us to thicken our sauce. And then I have our seasonings. Very important. This is something that you can also play around with. This is my personal favorite of combination. But again, play around with what you like. So in here I have paprika, garlic salt. I have salt and pepper. And then I also have ground mustard. If you don't like mustard, that's totally okay. I don't like mustard, and it doesn't taste like mustard. It's definitely something that I suggest adding. It's kind of just a flavor profile that is very different. It just adds something to the mac and cheese that makes it yours. So definitely something that I suggest. So this recipe, very easy. It's got 3 steps: sauce, mac, bake. So in your sauce, what you're going to do is you're going to melt your butter. As soon as your butter is completely melted, you're going to whisk in your flour. Very important. Make sure you whisk very thoroughly. You don't want any chunks. You wouldn't want to bite into flour in your ooey gooey mac and cheese, so do make sure you whisk that as best as possible. Then you're going to add all of your liquids. Once you add all of your liquids, thicken it up a little bit, add your seasonings. And then once you add your seasonings, put your elbow mac and cheese into boil. So again, like I said, that measurement of 4 to 6 quarts, I have 5, is very important because we want to leach out as much starch as possible so that you're not thickening the sauce while you're baking too much. And then again, that time bake, or the time cook. So this says to cook for 7 minutes. I'm going to cook mine for 6, possibly 5.5, because you are baking this. So you want to remember that you don't want mac and mush, you want mac and cheese. So you don't want to continue to cook that too much while you're in the oven. So don't cook it completely to directions. When your elbow mac and cheese or elbow mac is all done cooking, make sure to rinse it with cold water. That's going to stop that cooking process so that it can continue in the oven as planned. So Once you put your elbows in, add those 2/3 of cheese in handfuls. And make sure to whisk and completely melt the handfuls before you add another one so that your sauce doesn't turn out clumpy, so that you don't lower the temperature too much and things like that. You do not want a clumpy sauce. Once everything is done, the sauce is thickened, the elbows are all rinsed with cold water, what you should do is you should add about half of your macaroni into your sauce, completely stir it around as best as possible and distribute the sauce to the mac, and then add the other half and do the same exact thing as thoroughly as possible. And then what I suggest is in a glass 13x9 baking pan, buttered of course. Make sure you butter it. You do not want your mac and cheese sticking. You definitely want to eat your mac and cheese, not see it burn to the pan. Put about half of the mac and cheese down, and then add this layer of cheese just a little bit in the middle, that 1/3 that we had talked about splitting for the middle half, and then add the second half. And then once that's done, you're going to put it in the oven, 325 degrees for about 15 minutes. After that 15 minutes is up, what you're going to do is you're going to take it out and you're going to add this entire portion of cheese to the top to give it that super ooey gooey, kind of crispy at the edges cheese that we all absolutely love. And then once it's all done cooking, I highly suggest letting it rest for about 15 to 20 minutes. I know that sounds like a lot, but it's in a glass pan. If you let it rest on the oven, it's still going to stay warm before you cut into it. That just kind of brings it down to room temperature, allows the sauce to thicken and congeal, and that's definitely something you want to allow it to do. So we're just going to do a quick transition, and I will put everything together. Alright guys, welcome back. So I have our cheese sauce all nice and thickened up. It's come to a really good consistency. I made sure all of our cheese was completely melted. There's no lumps or clumps anywhere. And then when our mac and cheese was complete, or when our mac, I should say, was completely finished cooking, what I did was I just strained it in the sink, ran some cold water on it to stop that cooking process. Like I said, we do not want mac and mush. So I did mix up the process a little bit. What we're going to do is we're actually going to add the cheese sauce to the mac and mix it around to make sure we get that even distribution rather than the other way around. Just to make sure we get an even amount all over the place. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna drizzle that sauce right in there. Let's go about half. And of course, we'll wipe it off, just so that we don't make a mess. And then go ahead and mix it on in there with your noodles. Get it all nice and combined. Make sure to get every single noodle. And as you saw, I did grease our 13x9 glass pan. Again, that's very important. We do not want your mac and cheese to stick. I'm 100% sure you would prefer to eat it. And really just add the sauce until you feel it is mac and cheesy enough. I think I may just end up adding all of it, because who doesn't like cheesy mac and cheese? Alright. As a matter of fact, I am going to get the rest of this delicious sauce in here for me. Scrape it all in that pan, right in there. Put this right over here, and mix it all in there. And the one thing I can really smell is that paprika. It really, really lends to the flavor of the dish. Your seasonings are very important, because although we all do love mac and cheese, you definitely got to complement the cheeses that you use. So I've heard people playing around with all kinds of different stuff. It depends on the cheese that you use. So, you know, if you like a more garlicky mac and cheese, I've heard of people adding like sriracha seasonings, all kinds of different stuff. There's also different variations of peppers and salts and even paprikas that you can add to kind of make it your own and do what you'd like. Alright, so now that that is all combined, we are going to assemble. So as I mentioned, I did save a third of this big bowl of cheese. That's going to be our middle layer. And I'm actually thinking I might have to make 2 pans. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pull up some of it in there. And I'm going to make a mess, so let's grab this towel. Just put it right there so it doesn't get on the counter. Easier to wash a towel than it is the counter. And just spread it out nice and even for you. Add a little bit of that cheese. Again, you definitely want that ooey gooey cheesy layer in the middle. Spread it out just a little bit. Get it all over the place. Your second layer of mac. And again, repeat that. Spread it out. Kind of push a little bit, apply a little bit of pressure. You won't hurt anybody, I promise. Just spread it out there. Cover up that cheese as much as you can. And go in with another layer of delicious ooey gooey cheese. And just spread it out there. Now what I do in this layer, I like a little extra salt and pepper in almost everything that I eat. Just gonna do a quick grate of some salt and some pepper. Know that all of this mac and cheese is gonna fit, but you know what, we'll try. See where that gets us. sauce out. Put this directly into the sink. Spread that out as best as possible. Now, this is going to go in, again, that 325 degree preheated oven for about 15 minutes. I'd stay pretty sturdy on that 15. And then after that, we're going to add another layer of cheese right on top. It's going to create that ooey gooey texture that we all love. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this with a little bit of foil loosely so that the top doesn't get too stiff on us while it is cooking and melting all that inner cheese. And then after that 15 minutes and I put that cheese on top, we are not going to add the foil back on top. We're just going to plop it in the oven, let it go for that extra 15, and we'll see. All right, guys, so I have yet to open this up. I just wanted to have everybody take a peek at the same time. So this is after that first 15 minutes that we were going to put it in the oven without that layer of cheese. Please be very careful when you're doing this. You can burn yourself. So just open it up. And there's that nice ooey gooey mac and cheese that we all love. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna add that second layer of cheese on top. Well, not second, that layer of cheese, I should say. And we're just gonna spread it all around. And then we're gonna give it another 15 minutes in the oven uncovered to let those edges get all nice, ooey, gooey, and cheesy, and a little bit crunchy on the sides. And we will be right back. Alrighty, welcome back, guys. I have the mac and cheese here. I know you can't see much of me, but trust me, I'm sure you'd much rather see this delicious mac and cheese. I did let it cool down for just a little bit, about 10 minutes, I'd say. I put it in the oven for 15 and I broiled it for 2. Be very careful when you're broiling, especially cheeses, they do burn fast. Again, this was only 2 minutes under the broiler. If I probably would have allowed it for another minute, it probably would have completely burned. So please, please, please be careful. Also, when taking it in and out of the oven. So as you can see, I have not dipped into this amazing vat of mac and cheese. I wanted you guys to be able to share that moment with me. So let's dig in here and just get all kinds of gooey, cheesy goodness. All right, and we're just gonna put that in there. Give a little bit more because I am starving. All right. Let's put it right over that way. All right. Smells great. Let it cool down a little bit. If you have any suggestions or anything, just comment down below. Definitely looking for some suggestions. This was something someone had suggested for us, so you asked. It's more than willing to happen. So if you have any recipe suggestions, just comment them down below. Hit us up on social media at UEdgeAkron. Make sure to watch for next week's episode. And as always, go Zips!